time. It's our time, my friends. Time for millions of maturepreneurs, 55 plus, who are hashtag not done by a long shot, to revolutionize how we lead, do business, and innovate our world. I'm your host, Jeanette Anderson, and welcome to my conversations with fascinating people who would rather inspire than retire. One of the challenges of overcoming systemic issues is that they are so entrenched. They can be insidious, they are internalized, and they can feel really daunting to even make a dent in it. But I've been inspired and, in fact, emboldened even by so many cool people who are working to overcome ageism in many wonderful different ways. Janine Vanderburg is one of those people, and she would have us not wait to be rescued, but to build our own damn boat. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. She's a social justice warrior with a very pragmatic approach to staying viable and valued. And I got to admit to fangirling during this interview because she is one of my role models in the work that I'm doing. She's a great example of what happens when activism meets business sensibility and what it looks like to really own our own value. So please enjoy this interview with Janine Vanderburg. Great. Hello, everybody, and welcome to what I consider a very special episode of the Maturepreneur Podcast. And the reason it's special is because I love this woman, you, and the work that you're doing and just who you are in the world. So welcome, Janine. I'm very glad you're here.
Jeanette, I am so glad to be here. This is going to be so fun.
Yes. So Janine Vanderburg is someone that I've admired the work of on LinkedIn and so forth. And so reached out, connected, and plan to continue to stalk her throughout the rest of her days. So I'll tell you a little bit about her officially. Then we'll find out the juicy tidbits behind the scenes. And we're going to be talking today about how to use your experience, insights, and connections to launch a new enterprise venture in midlife and beyond and bring you the freedom and flexibility and financial reward that you are looking for and deserve to have, my friends. So Janine is an expert on this topic. So listen up, grab a pen, grab a piece of paper, and let's rock. So Janine Vanderburg is a 3-time entrepreneur and a nationally recognized expert on ageism and age inclusion. She's the CEO of Encore Roadmap, which we'll be talking about, which helps professionals turn experience, insights, and connections into consulting practices and helps companies leverage the benefits of older workers and intergenerational teams. She's the host of Build Your Own Boat, a podcast series featuring the stories and advice of women who have started new entrepreneurial ventures in midlife and beyond. And beyond that, she's an award winner and major influencer and general badass. So go look at the rest of the information in the show notes. But I'm happy to have you here. That is a long but partial list of all of your accomplishments. And you're still going strong, creating new stuff like Build Your Own Boat. So what is keeping you so busy? Why are you so active?
Why am I doing this?
Yeah, why are you doing all this?
Why am I, as people often ask older women, why am I still working?
Yeah.
I'm still working, and I realized at some point that the through line was always the desire to make a difference. When I was a small child, my parents would always say, oh, she's the one who's always saying it's not fair. Mm-hmm. And so when I saw things that I thought needed to be changed, I always kind of felt like I had to do it. And that I like doing it. And so one of the things when I think today of the anti-ageism work and Build Your Own Boat, one of the things that I think has to change is how people view older women, how people consider that entrepreneurs are supposed to be a young man with spiky hair and a laptop and a hoodie and somehow miss out on everything that is being created by women in midlife and beyond.
Mhm.
And so I just had a moment. Well, I've spent the last 10 years talking about ageism and positioning the value of experience to employers. Why wouldn't I tell the stories of women like you who have continued entrepreneurship in midlife and beyond? So that's why I'm doing Build Your Own Boat. It was fun.
Mm.
It's a fun thing, but it also has been my through line. See
Yeah.
something, got to do something about it.
Exactly. Well, and we have that in common. I shifted my business model and my focus in helping women entrepreneurs in general to the maturepreneur world because I got pissed off because I experienced ageism and it impinged on me and I was like, no, I've been the subject of sizeism and sexism. I'm not tolerating a thirdism. Forget it. And so that became the, kind of clarion call behind shifting to maturepreneur world is it's not okay to dismiss 25% of the population and
Mhm.
overlook us and just have us become invisible because because that's what we've been taught we should do. So that's why I appreciate the work you're doing so much. Um, we kind of answered the question about your purpose, which is that you basically have to right injustices because that's just not going to stand around you. That's been the through line for most
I
of
would
what
call
you've
that a
done?
through line. And one of the things when I started my consulting company, that I grew to a multi-million dollar firm, and that was another moment. It's very similar to, I think, the situation that a lot of older people now find themselves in. But it was kind of that point in time where uh, one has a child, and my oldest daughter had been born, and I kind of looked around and realized that the way work was structured was kind of not going to work if I wanted to spend any time with this child. And so this sort of notion that I always have of it's not fair kind of came out. And I ended up, and I think I started out as an accidental entrepreneur. I just said, well, I'm going to kind of do this little thing on the side. And friends, even my husband, were calling it, oh, this is Janine's little project. And eventually, Janine's little project, became a well-known social sector consulting firm. We had contracts with federal government, private foundations, lots of nonprofits, and so we grew that. But it was always lodged in the idea that we have an obligation and we can't help make things better. Jeanette, I don't know if you've ever taken Strengths Finders, but when I took it for the first time, my two top strengths were futuristic and activator. And my team at the consulting company used to say, Janine has a vision of what should happen. And her activator is asking us, why didn't we do it yesterday? And so I think that has been kind of this driving force of seeing something and saying, well, we could all sit around and talk about how awful it is, or we could actually do something about it. So yes, I would call that the through line, purpose,
Your
the
why.
kind of the driving force, and I just can't see giving up. I know, I'm sure all of us who are maturepreneurs have friends who are saying, why don't you retire and why don't you just come out and play with me? And I'm like, well, I don't play golf.
Yeah.
What exactly would I do?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly. And frankly, because that just sounds boring. And and
you say, yeah, I didn't want to say boring, but yeah, and no offense to anyone who's retired who's listening, but yes.
I wanted to ask you this right at the very beginning, but tell us something about you that would perhaps surprise us, because we're launching into the business and the various things you've done. But what's something that a lot of people don't know about you?
So I would say this, and I'm not sure it's kind of the big thing that you're looking for, but I was at a women's retreat with Project Renewment this fall, and we were doing that truths and a lie kind of game. And so one of the truths that I put out there was I really care about ageism, and everybody knows me as a national ageism expert, so everybody thought, well, that was easy, it was the truth. And actually, it's not that I care about ageism. That's kind of like some of the work that I've been doing. But what I've always really cared about from from a moment that happened when I was in high school, but I care a lot about women's economic security.
Mm.
And and that was really the driving force in my consulting firm in leading an anti-ageism initiative. It wasn't the fact of ageism, it was how really women are treated across the life course and how it affects our financial security. And Jeanette, one of the things that was so shocking to me when I became really involved in ageism was to find out how many women our age were trying to live on really small amounts of like Social Security. They didn't have the 401k, they didn't have the savings, had been more likely to step out of the workforce, right, to take care of children or older family members. And in my generation, been paid less over a lifetime, right?
Yep.
So I think people are really surprised when I say I really don't care about ageism. I do care about its impact on women as we get older. So
Yes, absolutely. And that, I mean, that is a big part of the driver for me as well, is most people don't realize 65% of the population in North America, and pretty much the same around the world, roughly between 50 and more, 70, can't afford to retire. They have to create income because you can't live on, in my case, $1,250 a month that I get from CPP, Canadian pension plan. And so you have to create income. Good luck getting a job because of ageism in the workplace. So there is, and a tremendous number of those are older women for all those reasons that you just cited. So my mission, purpose, whatever you want to call it, my mission right now, the expression of my purpose is to end ageism through entrepreneurship, because I see that as one of the most viable paths for people to solve that problem. And, you know, the other 35% that control 80% of the wealth right now and who are very affluent are choosing not to retire because they want to stay healthy and active and engaged and contribute and so forth. So we have a whole new world of retirement not being a thing.
well, and Jeanette, that's why when I met you and learned about you, I was like, she's the Canadian Janine. Like,
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thank you. That's a compliment. And so let's talk a little bit about entrepreneurship. Why do you think it's so important later in life? Because I know why, you know, for those reasons, economic viability, sometimes it's the only option. But you've been a passionate entrepreneur and advocate about that, and your business, the Encore Launchpad, is predominantly about helping people become consultants, specifically entrepreneurial later in life.
So important. The big recognition that I had in a lot of this was in positioning. So a lot of what I've done for the past decade is, one, lead different campaigns against ageism, but also talking to employers, doing workshops, keynote speeches about the very real strong business case for older workers and intergenerational teams. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that just kept occurring to me was the same kind of things that I would talk about to employers about being a business asset, I realized are also incredible assets if you're going to try to build a business. So, for example, this idea of pattern recognition, right? Of being able to see something going on and saying, looks like this, let's make a connection. The ability to identify problems that can be solved, right? What does any good entrepreneur do? We either experience or we see a problem, we're like, I could do something about that. The fact that as we get older, and this is something I was talking to employers about, and I was like, well, the same thing is true if we're starting our own venture. We have all of these connections that we've built up over a lifetime, people that we can reach out to for introductions, for, some of the women that I've interviewed on Build Your Own Boat literally have asked friends for seed capital because we know venture land out there isn't exactly giving money to older women entrepreneurs. One woman I interviewed said, I don't look like Mark Zuckerberg. I look like Mark Zuckerberg's mother. And so she started a tech company basically by, with checks from friends. Yes. When you're 20, you don't have friends typically that can write you checks to start a company, but as you're older, you do. So we've developed these connections, which are helpful. We've developed this insight and this experience, and I think all of that, I don't speak generally about entrepreneurship in the way that you do, but because I ran a highly successful consulting firm for over 3 decades, I know how to teach people how to take that experience, insight, and connections and turn it into a successful consulting practice. And I think to answer the first part of your question, Jeanette, part of it is finances, but I also think at this life stage, we kind of want that freedom.
Mhm.
We want the flexibility to be able to, move around, travel. Um, I personally love the flexibility of saying no to clients that I don't want to work with, which I think is one of the strongest thing that any consultant can do, is to figure out, who you're really good for and who you're not, and that kind of thing. So I think that there are a lot of reasons why we do it, and all of those reasons are grounded in the experience that we've built up kind of over a lifetime.
Yes. Well, and to me, the kind of one of the bigger ironies in life is that corporations, especially in the corporate world, and companies tend to make redundant, downsize,
Mhm.
generally oust older people because they consider them too expensive, only to hire them back as consultants at 2 to 3 times the rate. Why? Why does that happen? What is going on in the world that makes sense?
So Jeanette, when I am my least polite, I use swear words. When I'm at my most polite, I'm just like, it's stupid.
Yeah.
And part of it, and this is where I do care about ageism. Ageist beliefs are so embedded in our culture
Yeah.
that it is literally, people don't even think about being ageist in a way that they might at least stop and think before they were overtly sexist, although I've got to say less so now. Um, it's just the messages that we are absorbing every day, I think even make us ageist. So one of the things, I don't know if you've encountered this in your work, Jeanette, I run into women, including women who have signed up for my Encore Consulting Launchpad, who say things like, am I too old to start something new? And I'm like, you're 55. What do you mean, are you too old to start
Exactly.
something new? What? No, of course not. It's the fact that you've got that experience that is going to make you successful. And you know as well as I do the data that shows that older entrepreneurs are 2 and 3 times as successful as
Mhm.
younger ones are. This is in no way to diss younger entrepreneurs,
Mhm.
because my belief is ageism affects people both younger and older. Um,
Exactly.
but it's just they haven't had the chance to make as many mistakes as we have,
Yes, that's
and
right.
to learn from them, right? So,
Exactly.
and I think that's what makes us more successful.
Yes. And the contextual framework we have. So we have, like you mentioned, pattern recognition. It's not just that we've been around a long time, because that can actually be a liability as well.
Right.
When people take the past and throw it on the future, but when we have that contextual understanding and can kind of see the
Yeah.
big picture, and that ability, I think we undervalue. And certainly society does. And yeah, internalized ageism is a big thing. And I think particularly with women, um, we literally become invisible later in
Mhm.
life. And that's frankly what pissed me off on the cruise that I was on. Was I was at a table, an eight top. There was two gray-haired women at the end of the table, and I had been dismissed at a networking event, and that surprised me a lot because I tend to be pretty visible. But these two women were sitting down there. We were all talking to one another, etc. No one was talking to them. So I yelled down at the end of the table, "How are you two doing?" The two people sitting across from them literally did this. They had not seen them. They were
Yeah.
sitting right across the table from them. And that was the thing, like that just enraged me so much that I was like, oh, no, no. Oh, no, no, no,
Yeah.
no. That's not okay. So that's what drives me now, pulls me, inspires me, whatever it may be. What is it about build your own boat that was so important to you? Why that message? Why that market? Why did you build
Okay.
it?
So can I talk about 5 reasons, and I'll be really brief about each one. So this issue about women's economic security first surfaced to me literally when I was in high school, and I was sitting at the dining table, and my dad's tax accountant was sitting down with my mom and dad. This was this was in the era right before women could have their names on bank accounts and businesses and that kind of thing. And the tax accountant looked at my dad and he said, you do better on taxes this year if you put Jean's name, my mother's name on it. And my dad just said no. Now, my dad was a great guy and everything, but a man of his time, right? And I just remember my mother's face crumbled. And I remember thinking, you could work really hard with someone all of your life. You could help build something, but you don't have your own name on it, right? So that was actually the impetus for me to go to law school. Fast forward, I am in my mid-30s. I have my now oldest daughter, and I look around and realize that if I want to spend any time with her, kind of traditional work isn't going to work. So I start Janine's little project, the consulting firm. And the way we grew it, and we grew to multi-million dollars, 35 employees, was I looked around and saw that there were so many other women who were parents of young children, and nobody kind of the system hadn't figured out that, like, if you work the traditional time, like, who's going to pick up the kid after school, and what happens when the baby gets sick. So we had these, everybody worked part-time, all flexible hours, and we had these 2 shifts. And it was one shift was if your baby was in daycare, you might have her there or him there 2 days. So you did a 9 to 5 shift 2 days, and most of our schedules were basically from 9 to 2. So drop off children, pick up children, and that kind of thing. And we grew because we were able to attract all of these really smart women who were being rejected in the traditional job market. And at one point, the password for the building that I ended up building for or buying for our consulting firm was 25 smart women, right? And then we grew beyond that. But so there was that moment. And then when I stepped away from the consulting firm, left it in the hands of some very capable younger women to start the anti-ageism initiative, I realized, and I saw so many women that were my age that had been employed all their lives, but were really trying to make do on really small amounts of Social Security, 401k, and all of that, for the reasons we mentioned earlier. And I just thought, and our society needs caregivers. We rely on women to do it, but we don't kind of reward them. They're penalized at the end, right, and facing financial insecurity. And then someone literally asked me, when I was on another podcast, when have you experienced ageism? And I realized that I hadn't, because I had been self-employed for most of my life. So the only person who was going to be ageist was me, looking at myself in the mirror saying, oh, Janine, you're too old to do that. And I wasn't about to do that. And all of this culminated. So this is the long answer to your short question, Jeanette. I was telling some of these stories at a women's retreat this past November. And I was telling the story of using 5 different AI image generators to generate the picture of an entrepreneur. And every single image generator did the same identical picture: young man, hoodie, spiky hair, laptop. And I looked out at this group of women and I said, without thinking about it, and I'm going to tell the stories of women entrepreneurs. And then what happened basically for the rest of the 2 days of the retreat conference was women were swarming me saying, this is my story, this is my story. And I realized that and you and I know this, right? Because we're doing this, we're in this world. But when people think of the word entrepreneur, they do not think of women like us. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, I'm going to tell the story. This is going to be my 2026 project. There you go. That's how Build Your Own Boat came about.
I love that. And I love, again, it's part of your through line of this is not okay. This is not fair. So let me just go fix that by doing something and creating a vehicle that supports a different solution. So what's been surprising you as you do these interviews with these amazing women? And you have had some incredible shows. And I got to say, I love the amount of work that you do around your podcast. Like, I was just reading the email today about the woman who, I'm not Mark Zuckerberg, I'm his mom. Yeah. And you do posts about them, you do articles about them, you do, I think, Substack as well.
I started a Substack. Yeah, so for me, it's been new learning too. Learning how to do a podcast, still figuring that out. Writing Substack articles, doing LinkedIn articles. But part of my goal is to just elevate the idea in as many forums as I can that this is a viable path for women. Women are doing it. A friend, Juanita Chacon, who always says we cannot be what we cannot see. And I feel like if people don't see examples, they're hesitant. they're hesitant. They don't know. They that internalized ageism and societal messages says I'm too old instead of saying, oh, look, she did it. I can do it. Right. So I think, and this has been the most surprising and the best part of all of this, Jeanette, is I thought that there would be one fairly common story. And it turned out that was not the case at all. There are women who've been in corporate forever and then just hit that moment, I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I'm done with corporate.
Mm-hmm.
Some women, and I think this is the category I thought I would be interviewing more about, women who had actually been pushed out because of ageism. Some of those, but not exclusively. And there are some women who have always had this idea in mind, I've wanted to do something else.
Mm-hmm.
And so they are following. So I think it's a combination of passion, purpose, paycheck. And then I also think that in the classic entrepreneurial thing, women are just see opportunity. And, this one friend of mine who started this card company called Age Friendly Vibes was actually she was a volunteer with our anti-ageism initiative. We started having a conversation about those really awful ageist birthday cards that are like, you're done, you're feeble, you're angry, all of those things. And so she came up with this idea of doing cards with positive messages about aging.
Okay.
So instead of, the card that says, damn, you're old, her cards say, damn, you're hot. And, that kind of thing. She has all these, Jan Golden has all these fun messages. And so I think she was a case, she had a job. She wasn't pushed out. It wasn't like she had always said, I want to be a birthday card designer. But she just kind of looked around and saw an opportunity. And that to me is classic entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
You see an opportunity and she's done amazingly well. So I think what's been most surprising to me are the many paths that people have. There's not just one thing. And also the many directions. There are some women that are absolutely financially driven. And it's like, I gotta, I'm looking at my numbers I've got to make this much money. And I think other women who are like, just, I'm going to see where this takes me. And so that I think has been really interesting. And from the point of view of someone who, with this podcast and Substack series and this project, wanted to inspire women to think about entrepreneurship, it's a great thing because it shows people there are a lot of ways that you can do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's not just one way. So that's been fun.
That's an excellent point, is that sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And so like you said, we cannot be what we cannot see. And so I think it's great to have those examples. It's also, I think, very empowering to hear, like you said, all the different ways of thinking about it, because I think the thinking is one of the biggest challenges we have right now going on, an identity crisis globally, with so many people saying, who am I now that I'm not the CEO or the stay-at-home mom or the accountant, because we've conflated role with our purpose, and we've been told you are what you do and so forth. It's not true. I fully contend that that's not what our purpose is at all. It's why we do what we do. But there's a lot of people who are trying to make that shift and figure out, who am I now? But also, I think there's this bigger transformation that needs to happen of shifting our mindset around how we're going to be in the world, who we are going to be, and the choose versus push mentality. So we come from a whole lifetime of expectation driven, you're going to go to school and you're going to graduate and get a job and have 2.5 kids, get married, have 2.5 kids, pick a fence, retire. And there's this whole expectation. And now you get to this point and it's all choice predominantly. Right. There's economic limitations, etc., but it's choice. We built our life around our business or our career. And now the opportunity is to build our career or our business around our life. But that's a big mindset shift. What for you has been the biggest challenge in going, if you have, from that whole push that is often typifies most of how we grow up to now that choose place?
Yeah. So I think I'm probably in a little different category, Jeanette, because I've always been choose your own adventure. From the time that I, started my consulting firm, I was like, okay, that's not going to work for me, so I'm going to do this.
Right.
And what I loved about running a consulting firm was the choice of projects that we had. I didn't have to do just one thing. One day I could be the CEO. One day I could be leading a strategic plan for a major foundation about how they were going to direct their grant making. The next day I could be securing a federal grant to build the capacity of a number of organizations. So I had a lot of choice within the firm of the kind of work that I did. When I decided to step away from the consulting firm and actually start an anti-ageism initiative with someone who had been a client of mine. So we co-founded Changing the Narrative. And then I chose to step away from that because some of the structures, when you are funded by an outside funder as opposed to generally fee for service, the funder may have some expectations and maybe you might disagree with them. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. So I just, stepped away and went into, venture three, which is, Encore Roadmap, speaking to employers, running Encore Consulting Launchpad and that kind of thing. Build your own boat, really, I think of it more as a side project. It's something that it builds on having run a consulting company. And one of the reasons it started was literally a friend of mine who had been, he stepped out of a role with a major foundation and thought he was going to find a job again right away. Turns out he had turned 60, and so he wasn't going to find a job right away. And he said, can you teach me how to consult? And then in short fashion, a number of people were like, who knew me as a successful consultant, were like, can you teach me how to do this? Can you teach me how to do this? And I was like, I can't have coffee nonstop one-on-one with people, but what I can do is I can roll it up into a cohort program. And that's what I ended up doing with Encore Consulting Launchpad.
So tell us a bit more about that and the world of consulting right now. Is it as easy or as hard as people think? Because I think a lot of people are in two camps.
Yeah.
I'll hang out a shingle and I'll be instantly hired, or
No.
They didn't want my expertise in the company. Why would they hire me now? So what's the
okay? Yeah, that's faulty thinking on both, not on your part, but on the part of people who believe that. So I think a big part, and this is what we do in Encore Consulting. So Encore Consulting Launchpad is basically, it's kind of a series that I probably am going to run twice a year. And it is a series of structured live classes done virtually because they're people from all over who are participating, as well as kind of like an online community that I run through Circle. So people can post, I give homework, people can post things and whatever, post their questions. But we start with kind of your question, Jeanette. What's really your why? What is your purpose? And then we do a number of exercises, including some AI enhanced exercise if I know that this is my purpose, if I know that this is the thing that people have always come to me for, not what your job title was, but what are the things that people are always coming to you for? And it could be in personal or professional or a combination. And also that I love doing, because the last thing you want to do at this life stage, right, is something. So for example, in my consulting firm, I was extraordinarily good at grant writing. I would bring in those $20 million grants for our clients. And then one day I said, I never want to write a grant proposal again.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that. So I don't want to do that consulting, but it kind of really honing down. And we start with that. And then based on that, it's like, okay, so who needs that right now? Because at the end of the day, it's still about who has problems can be solved. It's not what we want to do. And so the people who think it's too easy, just hang out their shingle, haven't really thought about who really needs what they want to do and are really great at. And the people who think it's too hard I think they get frightened by the business aspect of it. If you've been in corporate all of your life, and I had a number of people in our Launchpad who've been in corporate, you've had somebody else do the marketing for you. You haven't had to position your own skills and that kind of thing. So the marketing might freak you out. You never had to do your own accounting or bookkeeping, right? And so, my answer to everything is there are people who can help you with that. What you want to do is you want to focus on what you are extraordinarily good at. And the other really, really important thing to me is that you've got to just get started and not. I have seen so many women and men do I'll get one more certification.
Yeah.
I'll take one more course.
Yeah.
I'll talk to 10 more people.
Yeah.
I'll have a focus group and see if people want it. You don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. To me, and this is, I said earlier, futuristic and activator. My activator has a bias for action. And what I've always done is I've tried something out. I kind of put it out in the marketplace. When we ran our consulting firm, a huge entry point for people hiring us for consulting services were the workshops that we would do. We would do workshops, we would do boot camps, we'd do all these things. People would meet our team, then they'd say, we want to hire you for full-on consulting gigs. But I didn't do focus groups before I did a workshop. I had an idea, I'd do a workshop description, I'd put it out there in the universe. If people signed up and paid, and we always ask people to pay in advance, then we're like, okay, I guess we're going to do this workshop. And that's been my philosophy. I think it doesn't work for all kinds of businesses, but for consulting, put something out there. If people will buy it, you're good. But if you spend enormous amounts of time, I've had people who are like, I've got to build this huge website. No, you don't. You're on LinkedIn. Ramp up your LinkedIn and just do it, right? So I think people put too many obstacles and they get too scared. And that's what the Encore Consulting Launchpad is really about. It's like, as is Build Your Own Boat, it's to reduce the level of fear. You can do this. Look, if this person has done it, if I've done it, you can do it, right? Yeah. And so it's a lesson fair to provide community support and to encourage. I mean, this is our time. And I really believe that if there is something that you've wanted to do, it's your time to do it. If you need to financially, you shouldn't feel bad and don't feel stigma like I still have to make money. So many women still have to make money. Do it. Just go out and make money. And, the other thing we talk a lot about, I'm sure you've seen this in the Maturepreneur, is women undervaluing themselves and somebody will, people still ask me to speak for free all the time. And one person said, well, for the exposure. And I was like, how did you find out about me? And they were like, your name is everywhere. And I was like, so you thought I needed the exposure? Like, no. If you are my bestie, I will speak at your event for free. If I serve on your board of directors, I will speak at your event for free. Anybody else, pay up, honey.
Yeah.
But we've got to bring that attitude into everything we do.
Well, and that was literally my next question for you, is one of the bigger challenges is people don't really understand their value, claim it, own it, have not articulated it, haven't thought about it, and certainly haven't positioned or tried to sell it. And so what do you see in the conversations you've had, the work you've done with people in consulting and so forth? What do you see around that, the crisis of claiming our value? And what are some of the tips that you give people to really start to come back home to that?
Yeah. So part of it is like sheer numbers. I mean, one of the activities that I do in my Encore consulting is we have a whole segment. We do a whole session on pricing and the different kind of pricing. There's value pricing, never do hourly, outcome-based pricing. I talk about something called happy hour pricing. And what I mean by that is if you want to give it a discount, think of it as kind of happy hour. There's a reason that restaurants have happy hour or reduced early hour pricing. And it's because they want to get people in and then they'll, hopefully stay and that kind of thing. They want to get people in. And so, for example, when I did Encore Consulting Launchpad, I did happy hour pricing because when I launched my first one, I was about to go to France for 3 weeks. And I thought, I don't want to worry about when I come back, whether people are signed up or not. So if you sign up by this date, you're getting a discount. And after that, it's, so understand, the first thing is people need to understand concepts of pricing. Yeah. Then they need to understand value. They need to understand, kind of what other people are charging in the space. They need to understand the outcome it delivers. And most importantly, what the value of that outcome is. Mm-hmm. In fundraising, it was always really easy because if I'm going to bring you $20 million in a grant, you're not arguing with me about, a couple thousand, one or another, what I'm going to charge you to pull this thing together. In other things, it's a little bit harder, but a tool that I use is a pricing calculator that I created which helps you know your baseline. So you're putting in, here are the numbers I want to work, or the number of hours I want to work. Here are the number of weeks I want to work. Here's the nut. Here's what I need and want to make. So you're plugging all of this in. There are formulas, calculator. This is the amount of time I'm going to spend on marketing and on administration. So here's at least, even though I'm not quoting an hourly rate, here's what I know when I'm pricing something out that I have got to make hourly. And then we bundle it up into things. And then we literally have people practice saying, and my rate for this project is whatever. And we do role plays. If I say, and the rate for this project is $20,000, and you, Jeanette, say, I can't do 20, I might ask you, well, what is your budget for this? And if you say it's 15, then I'm not doing the project for 15. I am taking money, I'm taking parts of the project off the table, and I'm saying I can do this. So we do those kind of role plays. And I think it's so, so important, because one of the things I found, it's stunning to me that women don't actually know what is the amount of money that they have to net. And I think if you don't know that, how can you even start pricing? So it's kind of starting with that. And then you need to know what else is out there in the world. And then this is where the reality check comes in. If you know that what you've got to make things work, and given the number of hours you want to work and all of the things, and I'm just going to use a round number to make it easy. If you know that you've got to make 200 an hour, and you kind of look around and you do kind of your environmental scan, and you discover everybody else is delivering similar results for 125, you've got a decision. Either I'm not going to do that, or I'm going to figure out how I can make it premium, or I'm going to do something else, right? But you can't have it both. You can't do, and we literally have people go through those activity. And because I love Excel spreadsheets, I make everybody do them in Excel. So that way it's like, oh, okay. And all they have to do, the formula's all built in. All they have to do is look at the bottom number.
Well, and I love everything you just said, because I think it's so important for people to be looking at that. And when I first said people really struggle with their value, what you went to was pricing, and that's the kind of personification of, or the kind of indicator of where we might value ourselves in the marketplace. Then there's the question of value to the client, which you mentioned. It's what is the value of the work to the client or to whoever is hiring. And then there's our intrinsic value. And I think we often, especially women, conflate those. We think that our intrinsic value has something to do with, what we're putting out there and what we're selling. It's not. It's what is the value for the client, and what is the pricing based on all those various factors that we talked about. It's nothing to do with our value as a human being, but we think we have to pimp out our value as a human being. And that's not what we're talking about when we're talking about value. It's a different.
That's not what I'm talking about when I'm talking about business value. I'm really probably arrogantly clear about my value. If you want someone to be your biggest cheerleader, I'm it. If you want someone to be out there with you advocating against ageism, I'm it, and that kind of thing. If you want someone championing women entrepreneurs, I'm it. You are as well, but you know what I'm saying. But that's not what I'm charging for, and so I am always really clear to separate business value. And I've always been really clear in any of my ventures. This is what I needed to make. With the consulting firm, it was also, and this is what I need to pay all of these people on my team. Making payroll was always, a big part of that. As a solopreneur, it's a little bit different, because you can decide if the numbers work. I don't need to make that much this year, or that kind of thing. And that's kind of what I've done with Build Your Own Boat. I'm like, I am specifically devoting time to build your own boat. I am not doing this for financial reasons. I'm doing this because I am incredibly passionate about this. And so I'm considering in a way my volunteer work. But I also looked at the numbers and said, I can afford to do that this year.
Well, and in true Janine fashion, it will probably end up being a $1.2 million venture before long anyways. So
we'll see.
There's so many things that I would love to ask you and continue the conversation, but where can people find you? What's the best way to get in touch with you if they are looking for speakers,
Yeah.
professional speakers, if they're looking for information on your Encore Consulting Launchpad, if they're
Yeah.
looking for getting involved with Build Your Own Boat, why should they reach out to you and where should they reach out to you?
Okay, where they should reach out to me, follow me on LinkedIn. That really is anytime I literally, when I come up with a new idea, before I do anything with it, probably like months before it ends up on my website is encoreroadmap.com. But look at LinkedIn because LinkedIn, I'm usually on daily. I think that's probably how you and I connected, Jeanette, and it's just LinkedIn Janine Vanderburg. And so there I write about ageism. I write about the women in Build Your Own Boat. Jeanette, I still want to sign you up. I have to have you on my podcast. I still write one newsletter a week on LinkedIn called Slaying the Ageism Dragon. And that's kind of like all things ageism. A friend of mine calls it the skim of stuff about ageism because it just collects news of the week. But that's really the best way to find me.
Okay, awesome. I love that. So, in general, typically at the end, I ask people to provide one last piece of advice for someone who's out there listening and thinking, okay, what's next for me? How do I make that leap? But let me just add in a little bit of a nuance here. So you are a champion of righting injustices, and the kind of person, much like myself, I've never been hired for a job. I've always created any jobs I've had. Yeah. And so very much like you, it's like, what would I like to do, and how do I get paid for it? That's been my life's kind of direction. Not always easy, but it's the choice that I would prefer rather than
Right.
I fit in this box. And so what's hard for you? What scares you? And how do you get past the fear to move into action?
So that I was hoping you were just going to ask me the advice because I would just say, just get started, take action, right? Just move it. What scares me sometimes is, and I think this is true of us all our lives. I could do this and it could be a huge failure. Am I, destroying what I've already built? I've always tried to have what I call clean exits. So I'm not just leaving something, but I'm leaving it in good shape, in good hands, that kind of thing. But if there's a worry before I'm about to undertake a big thing, it's literally, suppose I totally screw this up. And then I look back and the way I get around it is, and so what if you did? Like the world is not going to end. The beautiful thing about what you and I do, Jeanette, is it's not brain surgery. If we screw up, somebody is not going to die, we hope. So, so just do it. Just go do it.
Beautiful.
Unless you're proposing to be a brain surgeon, then,
Yeah.
in that case, get the training and get the certification.
Exactly. Okay. And on that piece of wisdom, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening to this, please don't just listen to this. By all means, feel free to share this and subscribe, but take action. Do something like right now, right after you finish listening to this. Put something in your calendar, call someone, send an email, take an action that moves you one step towards that thing that you're considering or that you want to launch or that you're just, exploring, whatever the hell it is. Take a step, any step. And if you are not sure what that step is, reach out to Janine about her program if you want to go into consulting, or book a call with me. I have a What's Next Clarity call. We'll put the link in the chat below or the show notes, and reach out. We'll talk about what's that step that can get you moving towards whatever it is that you dream about and want, because you deserve to have that. And frankly, if not now, when? So thank you, Janine, for the work that you do and continue to do, for being such an amazing advocate. and for doing it really, really well. I love how you do what you do. You think so smartly about things. You put it so well. You are a very good teacher.
Jeanette, thank you for having me. I was so excited when you asked me to be on your podcast. I'm like, she's the guru. So thank you. I really appreciate that.
Totally. Yeah. Thank you. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Please go take an action step right now. Bye for now. Thank you for listening. I'd love it if you left a comment and subscribed. And I encourage you to apply one aha from this interview right away so you can turn your wisdom into wealth and your contribution into positive change. Bye for now.